Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
We are Love to Hate, where we help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Rise of Babel by Bedouin Games.
Rise of Babel is a game that is themed after the biblical story in the Old Testament about the Tower of Babel. Now, if you're not familiar with that, there was this event in the Old Testament in which the people were trying to build a tower, the highest tower, to make a name for themselves so they could reach the heavens and be equal with God. And as the story goes, God made it so that they couldn't build that tower, because this is where we got all of our different languages, as he struck the people with different languages and they all got confused and they gave up on building the tower. So you are going to be one of those people in your fruitless effort trying to build the tower. And as is the case, you will be bringing stuff to the tower and trying to place your tiles in specific spots on the tower to maximize your points. But there are going to be confusion tiles that the players are going to be playing against one another to take away some points. This is a deck building game and tile placement game. It's also coming to crowdfunding, so make sure you check out the link down below in the description of this video after you watch it to get all the details on the campaign page. Now, let's go down to the table where I'll show you how this one works, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, I have Rise of Babel on the table. Let me show you all about this deck builder game that takes after the Old Testament story of the Tower of Babel. Now, I do want to make sure you understand that what you see here is prototype. It is a very nice prototype, but it is prototype, so the final artwork components, maybe even some of the rules, might change once it's released from crowdfunding. That being said, for components, what you have here, you have a large central board here. Players are also going to have their own player boards. We'll come back to these here in just a minute, but there are lots of tokens in the player color that you will be putting on these boards. You do also have lots of cards. There's going to be cards that are in each player's hands at the beginning of the game, as denoted by this icon right here in the player color that player is playing as. You do have lots of cards that you will be buying in the market throughout the course of the game. You do have score markers, elephant tokens. You have lots of other tokens that are going to be placed out here on the towers. And speaking of the towers, you do have some overlay tiles that represent one major tower in the middle, but then you also have minor towers over here off to the right, and lots of those minor tower tiles. So that's, oh, and one other thing I forgot, you do have player bags in the different player colors that are going to have the different resource tokens inside them that you'll be drawing throughout the course of the game. Now, how this game works, you are going to be playing 3 years, and by years, what we mean by that is in year 1, you are playing until you fill up this level of the tower and all minor towers that might be out for that round. Then you'll be putting out year 2, and once this is filled up with any minor towers, then you'll put out year 3, and once that's filled up with any minor towers, then the game will be over and you'll proceed to final scoring. Now, how a turn is going to work, I mentioned earlier that every player has a deck of cards. There's going to be 10 cards, and they're the same 10 cards for all players. You'll shuffle them up, and you'll draw 5 off the top. And starting with that first player, you are going to be playing whatever cards you want. Typically, you'll want to be playing all the cards that you can, and all the cards are going to have at least one action as denoted in this white banner. Some cards will have a second action as denoted by this blue banner, and then some cards may even have a third action that would be a gray banner underneath it. So as you can see, this particular voyage card, this top action, this icon here, lets me move my elephant 1 step closer towards the tower. We'll go back to that in just a minute to tell you why you would want that. This is gold, which you're going to need gold throughout the course of the game to do a number of things. Primarily, you will be purchasing cards out of this market. Now, this deck of cards would not be right here when you're playing the game. It would actually be at the top of the board, and there would be 5 cards flipped out for you to form a market. But I'm just going to give you some examples of what these cards might look like. There's going to be a cost associated with every card. Some cards will give you victory points if that card's in your deck by the end of the game. And then again, there's going to be an action on the card, a secondary action, and unfortunately I don't have any that show you the gray banner to show you what a third action is. But these cards are going to be very powerful. They're going to let you do upgraded actions. The cards that you start with in the game are going to be very basic, and you'll want to upgrade to these cards as quickly as you're possible to. So that gold is going to be a very important factor in paying for these cards. Gold can also get you the two different types of cards that are always available to you, Jobs and Teamster. And so these are kind of a step in between the cards that you find in the market and the cards you start in the game, as these are going to let you do some things early on in the game, but these are one-time use cards. As you can see, you're going to have to discard this card to do the action that is there for you to do. And they are cheaper for you to get. They're two gold a piece. Now, the gold is also going to let you refresh the market, but then also to refresh the tiles that are over here on I forget what these are called, but basically these are going to be holding 3 of your resources over here. That's what these tiles right here represent. One of the resources that you are trying to present to the tower. And there are going to be 4 different major resources in the game. You've got stone, wood, tar, and then the blue resource, this little blue resource right here, that is bricks. And so I start the game with these 3 right here, and throughout the course of the game I'm going to be moving these tiles to my warehouse up here, and then from my warehouse maybe directly to the tower, or I can move them from these little pedestals right here, I think that's what these are called, pedestals, to my camp, which is where my elephant is at, right here at the very bottom of the board. And you do this primarily through the playing of your cards, but I can move this off of my player board into my camp, and if I don't have anything here in my camp, then I can move it directly onto my elephant. And this is how I'm going to be getting resources to the tower, by playing those cards that showed you the elephant icon. You're going to be moving your elephants one step closer to the tower, and as you can see, once they get here, then you're moving your resource directly to the tower. So let's talk about what that means. And so for this, I'm sorry if it's a little bit out of focus or a little bit far away, but essentially you are going to be tile placing. You're going to be placing these tiles on spots out here on the main tower or over here on one of the minor towers, and there's going to be a number of minor towers equal to the number of players in the game. And if you can cover up the printed image on the board or the tile that matches the resource that you're bringing, then you'll get 1 victory point for that, and that's this track right here. This track is the singles victory point track, and then once you get to the top all the way up there to 10, then you'll go up on the 10s track over here, and so then you come back down to the bottom, and I have 10 points, and you would keep track like that. So you're inclined to want to cover up matching icons with the resources that you're bringing, but you also need to keep in mind how these different resources are going to score at the end of every round. And the main board here reminds you of all of this right here. So each one scores differently. For the bricks, the blue resource, you want to get them vertically out here on the main board or the minor towers. And for each one that you have vertically in your player color, each player has their own resources that the background color matches their player color. So that's how you remember whose resource is which that was brought to the tower. You're going to get an increasing number of victory points. Whereas with wood, you want them to be horizontal. And as you can see, you get increasing number there. Now for stone, you want them to be diagonal. And you can see the points that you're awarded there. And it's going to reward you a little bit more points than what the other two will do, because it's harder to make a diagonal line than maybe one of the other lines. Now, the tar in the game, you just want to get your tar to be adjacent to as many of your tar as possible. And for each one that's adjacent to another, you'll get 2 points. This little box down here, this is confusion. Now, if you are familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel, this is the biblical account in which God made different types of languages and confused the people because he didn't want them to continue to build the tower, because they were trying to make a name for themselves. They were very prideful, and so this is where we get different languages, and it caused a lot of chaos and confusion. And so anytime a player gets to the 5 spot or the 10 spot on the score track, then they get to place out one of these confusion tiles. And when they place these out there, at the end of the round, any player who has a tile that is adjacent to it is going to lose 1 point, Plus, it also takes up a spot out here in the middle of the towers. And so this is a good way to block other people off, but also to rob points from them throughout the course of the game. So, and that's going to happen again on the 5s and 10s whenever any player gets to one of those spots. Now, players will continue to do this, playing all the cards that they have in their hand, taking these different actions. You can spend gold for wild tiles. That's what these are out here, wild tiles to place out there to count for any player. That's why it has all 4 colors out there. So you got to be careful about placing wild tiles because it's going to help not just you, but everyone. But then also you are going to be upgrading your board. Now, there are cards in your deck that allow you to upgrade your board, and when you do so, you're going to be playing a resource with that card, and whatever resource you pick, you're going to advance that resource 1 space to the right on one of these 4 tracks. Say I do the bricks, and then I move my brick token to this spot right here, unlocking this token, and this would go into my bag, and essentially this counts as both resources. So these tiles are better than the tiles you start the game with. If I advance it 1 more space, then this allows me to either upgrade my elephant or I can get one of these tiles right here, which these tiles right here, say I pick the tar right here, this is going to go in my camp, and every time I deliver tar throughout the course of the game, I would get 1 victory point. Now, upgrading your elephant, that's really kind of cool because your elephant only starts with carrying 1 resource for you, but you can upgrade it to where it will actually take 2 resources, and then you can upgrade it again for it to be able to take 3 resources. Oops, lost my elephant there. And so you can see how upgrading your elephant would be nice because you're only ever transporting just 1 resource with a basic elephant, but getting your elephant upgraded allows you to move 3 resources at one time. Once your elephant does get all the way to the temple, it automatically comes back to your base camp too, by the way. And then some other things about your player board. If you're able to get the token all the way to the end, then you are going to be earning some really nice bonuses such as free gold on your turn, free moves for your elephant. This token can be all 4 of the different resources. Plus, not only that, you're also getting victory points by just getting to the end of the track. And if you advance beyond the end of the track, you'll get 1 point for every time you do that. So you want to try to upgrade this as best as possible. Once you're done playing your 5 cards, taking all your actions, it will go to the next player and around and around and around until all the spaces out here are filled up, at which point that's going to be the end of the round. You'll do the scoring as I mentioned over here, and you'll put out the next tile starting the next round, the next year, and then you'll do the same thing. And then once you're finished with the 3rd year, then that will indicate the end of the game. And you'll proceed to final scoring, counting everything up as you did the previous 2 rounds. Whoever has the most points is going to be the winner, and that's how you play Rise of Babel. Let's go up top and share our thoughts on this one. And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Rise of Babel from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So Sam, the first thing about this one is the theme about it, right? Yes. So we're Christians, and we make a point to try to play some Christian games and get the word out there on them about that kind of thing. And so with this one, obviously it is a game that takes after an Old Testament theme, whether that be Jewish or Christian, same thing as far as it being Old Testament, and the Tower of Babel being a part of that. There's not anything about this game that's trying to convert anybody to either one of those. You don't need to know anything about either one of those religions to really appreciate this game. But it is something that is a part of that, and we do want to make a point to kind of touch on that. Now, so with this game, obviously you're bringing the resources to the tower. You're trying to build up the tower, and I think the mechanics really kind of play through with that. You've got the deck building, using your elephant to transport stuff. So talk about your thoughts on that and what the gameplay experience was like for you as a non-gamer.
When I first saw everything out on the table, because we've said this before, Lance sets everything up and then I come to the table because my time starts when I get at the table.
She doesn't want to wait around for anything.
No, he needs to know the game and sets it up.
Yep.
So I'm a game princess.
Yeah.
But when I saw it all, immediately I said, no, this is not not something that I'm going to enjoy.
It looked like it was a pretty heavy game for you,
Yes,
right?
and I will say it took me to at least the second round to feel comfortable with what I was doing. There's a lot of iconography, and that is, I'm bad at it. I am bad at remembering it. They make sense, and by the end, I was starting to get it.
She was
but
killing it by the
still
end.
having to ask, wait, does this token go from here to here, from here to here?
But I mean, guys, she was killing it by the end of the game. Like you were really finding some ways to.
I had one goal, and that was it.
She found some pretty good combos with the cards she got out of the market that she was able to move her elephant. Like your elephant was just, it like had turbojets. It was flying down the track, and I was in awe every time it was her turn. I was like, you're moving your elephant again. Like, what is going on here? So you really did well as far as figuring out how to do well in this game. So let's talk about the fun factor. How fun was this game for you?
At the beginning, it was not, just because the iconography. It was having to, just not feeling confident in what everything meant, having to constantly, and I mean every turn, saying, okay, what is this? And as a gamer, he knows to be patient with that.
Yep.
So if you're playing with a non-gamer, that's just something that comes up. Even after years of playing games, iconography is just not my strong suit.
Sure.
But after I got comfortable with that, definitely the second half of the game was a lot more fun.
And the thing about this, the first tower that you have is this really small tower.
Which makes no sense. It should have been at the end. You should start bigger to smaller, but...
Well, it's this 3x3 grid, and so you're looking at it and you're like, oh, we're going to fill this thing up in no time. And for us, anyhow...
It took a long time.
It took a long time to fill up that 3x3 grid.
We probably filled it up in the same amount of time as we did the big one
last
at the
two
end.
rounds. Yeah. And I think that's because it's a deck builder, so you're working on getting the better cards, and by the end of the game, you
double your cards.
Yes, yeah. And so what I was saying with that is that it really sort of feels like, man, okay, are we going to get a lot of points in this?
Yeah.
And so it starts off slow, and then by the second and third round... I think that was another
part of it, too, is the iconography, and then it's kind of slow. And like, how is my deck going to build?
Yeah.
And then you really see that the
and then
half.
It's like a snowball rolling down a mountain. It gets big and big and big, and then you're like, okay, I'm getting some points now. And the game really speeds up, and you really feel like, that third round, you see that 5x5 grid, and you're like, man, okay, this is going to be a big round. And then before you know it, the round is like almost over, and it's like, oh man, now I really got to cram out and really think through my turns how I'm going to get some points, because the tower fills up and it's over. So just a really interesting, fascinating experience with that the smaller grid actually took a lot longer than the bigger grid to fill out, and that's all because of the deck building aspect. And those cards in the market are just so drastically different from one another. Like this card here, it may only cost 3, but it's not going to give you hardly anything, whereas this card here costs 7, and you may have to really save up and find a way to get your gold to get that 7 card. But that 7 card is super powerful. Just a lot of variation between the different cards in the market.
I remember saying in the first round, how am I ever going to afford anything, because I'm using the 1 gold that I have to reset my stuff. So how is this going to work? And then by the end, you really do see that play out. Yeah,
it's definitely a game that surprises you along the way. On the surface, you kind of have some thoughts of how things might work out. And as reviewing games, we have those thoughts going into it. Okay, I can see what they're doing here and how they designed it and why they did this and that. And then you play it, and this one really surprised us. It just had a lot of different things that we weren't expecting to happen in it that I really enjoyed. So, excellent production on this game. I couldn't believe this was just a prototype that we received, because everything about it seems final and complete and extra nice. The production value on this is through the roof on this. And so Bedouin did a really good job on this one. And the gameplay experience is right there with it. I enjoy deck builders, and this is going to be one of those deck builders that I think, could be one of the better deck builders of the year. So... one that you would recommend playing with non-gamers?
I don't know. I think the slow start and the iconography could be a deterrent. I think a non-gamer, but not a brand new non-gamer. Somebody that maybe doesn't love games, but is willing and has participated in some
or maybe
before.
somebody who's very interested in the theme, because I think this is a game that's going to appeal to a lot of people that are, you know, looking for a great Christian Old Testament kind of board game. This could be that, or somebody who's just really interested in that aspect, that, you know, has great deck building and tile laying mechanics attached to it.
Really, it's a specific group that would be. Yeah.
Well, but I would also say this too, though. This game won you over by the time you were done with it.
I didn't want to. I was mad.
I'm telling you,
There's been times where Lance puts a game out and he knows this was not a good choice, and I was bound and determined to prove to him that this was a bad choice, and it was not.
It was not. It was a great choice. And I'm telling you guys, she was moving her elephant like lightning, and so that was just...
I did win. We'll just go ahead.
You got to get that in there, huh? You got to let them know that you won. But anyway, guys, great game here. Bedouin did a fantastic job. Make sure to check out the campaign link down below in the description of this video to get all the details and all the ins and outs of what's being offered in the crowdfunding campaign. And while you're down there, make sure to leave us some comments about Rise of Babel and about our channel here.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.